Hi, my name's John. I'm a Canadian senior who likes to travel and I do most of it solo. In this video, I'll be talking about budgeting for travel, but not in the penny pinching sense. For me, budgeting isn't about being cheap or frugal. It's about being prepared. When I've planned ahead and have a good sense of what my trip will cost, I can enjoy every moment without worrying about money. As a senior solo traveler, I've learned that planning a budget helps me to know how far I can go, how long I can stay, and the kind of experiences that I can include comfortably and confidently. So here's what I take into consideration. When I start planning a trip, I first decide how much I'm comfortable spending. And then I divide this into categories, not daily limits. My rough breakdown looks something like this. For trips a bit further afield, I might think that flights would cost me around 25 to 30%, and that would include seat selection if I decide to upgrade. Accommodation, well, I allocate about 25 to 35%. Food and daily expenses, 15 to 20%. Local transportation, maybe around 10%. And then activities and tours, another 10 to 15%. And finally, a small contingency fund for surprises, maybe 5 to 10%. These are kind of general, but they give me an idea about what I might want to spend. Now, once I have those numbers and some idea of where I want to go, I can work backwards to determine where I can be practical and where I'm going to splurge. I tend to think of expenses in two tiers: core expenses and those that are more flexible. Core expenses are the essentials, things that I usually pay for in advance, like flights, insurance, major transfers, and at least half my accommodation. I like to compare flight options early, seeing if shifting dates by a day or two changes the cost. I check several flight options with many airlines, both on sites like Expedia or Google Flights or Skyscanner, and then I'll zero in on a couple of preferred airlines and check it on their sites directly. Similarly, I map out roughly where I want to stay before I book, and then I look at options usually with booking.com or Airbnb. Flexible expenses are everything else: meals, local transport, day trips, and small pleasures along the way. I'm quite happy with simple meals: a bakery pastry and a coffee for breakfast, a patio beer and a sandwich in the afternoon, or a casual dinner at a pub. I enjoy tasting local dishes, but I'm not looking for fancy dining rooms. And at this stage of my life, I'm tending to pass on late nightlife. I'd rather go to bed in decent time and get up early to watch the sunrise. I usually pay down the core costs in advance when I know what the exchange rate is, and it breaks up the payment so I'm not left with a big bill when I get home. Before I travel, I usually move my travel funds into a separate account. It keeps the trip costs distinct from my household finances. And I always carry travel insurance that includes medical evacuation and trip interruption. Some of this I have on a private plan, but much of it I sort of rely on the cancellation and trip interruption insurance that you can get with your credit card. And I make sure that I have backup access to money: two separate cards that I keep in different places from different banks, and some emergency cash in small bills. Although I rely mostly on tap payments, not every place takes credit cards. So I bring a bit of local currency with me that I've exchanged at home before I leave. This way I've got a bit of cash in my pockets when I get out of the airport. And when I use my credit card, I get an instant alert on my phone. It's a small safety net against fraud that I find reassuring when I'm halfway around the world. I've come to believe that what I remember most from a trip are the moments, not the menus. So I mix in lots of free or low cost pleasures. I love walking to explore neighborhoods, and I'll often join a half day walking tour just to learn a bit of history about the location and to chat with other travelers. I take time to photograph neighborhoods or explore local markets. And then I might add in a few special splurges, maybe a snorkel excursion, a couple of days at a game park lodge in the African savannah, a memorable meal, or a private guide at a historic site. And it's worth remembering many attractions offer senior discounts. And I sometimes buy city passes that include local transportation and reduced admissions to local attractions. These small savings can add up. I also use this approach to selecting accommodation. Most nights, I'm perfectly content in a clean, comfortable 3-star hotel or Airbnb in a safe neighborhood. But once in a while, I'll treat myself to an upscale hotel for a night or two. It's a nice reward in the middle of a long trip. If I do withdraw cash, I take larger amounts in order to minimize multiple small withdrawals, each having their own withdrawal fee. Sometimes going to the teller window inside the bank avoids the ATM fee altogether. And I always have a couple of hundred US dollars or euros tucked away somewhere safe just for emergencies. I always pay in local currency when I'm given the choice, not in my home currency, because this offers me a better conversion rate. And if you have a card with no foreign transaction fees, well, use that whenever possible. Small bills and local cash are handy for tips, taxis, and street markets, but I use digital payment for almost everything else. I like to have the first few nights of accommodation booked before I leave. It's one less thing to worry about when I arrive tired and jet lagged. But after that, sometimes I leave an option to book a bit later. Maybe I'll find a place I want to linger longer, or I'll change my plans. I also try to limit the number of accommodation changes that I'll have to make during my trip. Having 2 or 3 bases where I stay for 3 or more nights in one region saves both time and transportation costs. It means less packing and unpacking and less time spent checking into a place and adjusting to somewhere new. If I'm staying a week somewhere, I'll look for a discounted weekly rate. It's often better value than booking night by night. Because I've done my homework before I go, I really don't spend a lot of time tracking every dollar I'm spending while I'm on the road. I already have a good idea of what I'll be spending, and I don't want to nickel and dime myself over a few dollars here or there. After all, I've worked hard and saved for years. This is the time to enjoy it. A slightly more expensive direct flight or hotel in a central location can save hours of frustration. I think of it as a cost per experience hour. Sometimes comfort and convenience are worth paying for. I remind myself to pay attention to valuing time as much as money. In the end, budgeting a 3-week trip isn't about austerity, it's about intention. I like to spend freely on experiences that bring joy and connection, but I also build in a safety net underneath: insurance, a bit of financial cushion, and the flexibility to say yes when something special comes along. I'm always pleased when I find a bargain, and I don't mind a bit of frugality either, as long as I'm comfortable, safe, and able to absorb as much of a destination as possible. So that's what travel means to me in retirement: the freedom to learn, to explore, and to reward myself for a lifetime of work without apology. Now, how about you? Tell me in the comments what you think about when you're planning the cost for an upcoming trip. I hope you have safe travels, and I'll see you next time.